Click. Click. Hello everyone, this is Take from BigHeadTaco.com. I'm still coming to you from inside the Yan Cath rug art store in Vancouver down in the Railtown district. It's called Finley Cath because Jenny Finley as well as partners with Yan Cath in this business down here. So Jenny, thank you so much for allowing me to use your store. She's off in Germany. You can hear some of the industrial type sounds. That's the little boom lift that Ben is using. But here is my review of the new Fujifilm X-T1 Silver Graphite edition. Now, pretty much the only real difference is there was a bit of a firmware difference, but with version 3.0 that came out, it equalized whatever this can do, the older black version could do, but pretty much cosmetic. But the main reason why Fujifilm sent this to me is so that I can review this 56mm f1.2R APD lens. Now, what is APD? You can go to Fujifilm's website and do the whole research. Apodized filter that gives I was gonna memorize the wordage, but it works on the bokeh, the out of focus area, as well as there's a slight amount of vignetting, and you'll see that in my written review as well as some samples. But I had a great time using it. Fujifilm initially was curious if I wanted to review this camera, this lens, because initially I reviewed the non-APD version and I didn't complain about it, but as a street photographer, it's hard to shoot at an 85mm equivalent focal length. Now guys like, I keep on forgetting his name, well-known street photographer that shoots, Saul Leader, shoots on the street, beautiful street photography, kind of abstracty, but he likes shooting with a telephoto lens, which is very unusual. Most street photographers are between 35, maybe even 28mm to 50mm equivalent. Going 85 is quite different, but you just need to change your mindset. It makes sense that street photographers typically stick to a single focal length because that's what they're used to. So 85 is not ideal for street photography, but it's not that it can't be done. And it was a great challenge for me. So you'll see the type of pictures I did. I ended up doing mostly portraiture because of it, because you know, a lot of my pictures are inconspicuous street shots, but often I do speak to people and I ask permission to take the picture, and that's what I often ended up using this lens for. So let's quickly go over, first of all, the X-T1 Silver Graphite edition. I thought it was a gimmick. Often Fujifilm is famous for, you know, the X100, and then 6 months or a year later they come out with X100 Black and they charge a premium for it. And then it's funny, and then the X100S, same thing. S, and there was a black version, and then the T, the silver and the black came out at the same time. This one here, it came out as black, which most people like, at least I like it, I shouldn't say most people. And then they came out with this Silver Graphite edition, which kind of looks like titanium to me. And I thought, oh, it's another gimmick. And even Billy, the Fuji guys, he did a video with, I think, the Fuji guy from Australia, and he mentioned this metal cap for the shoe as one of the features. And I thought that was kind of silly, but then, you know, actually you feel it and you look at it and you're like, wow, actually, it is pretty nice. Now, if I can complain about one thing about this cap here, to me, it slips off too easily. And I'm not just whining, because twice it slipped off while I was shooting, so I was so scared. And also I like putting a fill flash when I'm on the street, so I ended up just taking this off because I was afraid it would come off. So maybe if you have this, I don't know, you could maybe add something on the back end to give it a little bit more thickness, and then it won't slip out as easily. But it's a beautiful looking camera. I almost felt like one of the complaints a lot of people have is because of the weather sealing, there's not much, the button's very flush here, and there's not a lot of movement on it, including the shutter. There's not a lot of movement, but I understand it's because of the weather sealing. It almost feels like it's a little bit easier to use, and maybe it's just it's a mental thing. And maybe because instead of it being all black, you can actually see the contrast. But even when you're shooting with your eye here, it almost feels like I can find the buttons better on this one. But it could be just me. There was the version, okay, so for this camera, the Silver Graphite and the non-Silver Graphite, the black edition, they both jumped to version 3.0 firmware. And if you look on the Fuji website, I can't remember now, 27, 29 improvements. There's so many improvements. Go through them all. I didn't have a chance to go through it all because a lot of them I would never use, but I will mention at least two. One of them is I complained about the Fuji's using the custom button. So this one you can use the entire 4 ways, the custom, just like the X100T. You can change this front button here and the Wi-Fi button. It says Wi-Fi, but also says FN. You can change those. And one of the complaints I had was, why can't you add flash compensation? And one of the things I recommended to Fuji was underneath the exposure compensation, why not put a second control dial, which they have on the other two, that there's a lower control dial feature. Put the flash compensation underneath here because it was a headache accessing flash exposure compensation. I did the video with Kurt Dahl previously, and it took me, I can't remember what it was, 8 seconds to find flash compensation and then adjust the compensation. Now they allow you, with the upgrade, they've added a few extra things that are part of the, you can access the FN, the quick features, and they've included flash exposure compensation. So Fujifilm, I don't think it was just me, but it was one, I was one of them. Clear about that. Thank you so much for, Ben is busy working, so that's all right. Thank you so much for adding that, because that was a headache to access. There's so many things you can customize in it, which is a good thing, but it's how you access it. So that was upgraded. Another thing was the, like it was already in the X100T, they upgraded the quick button so that you can now access, you can choose what's in the quick menu, and you can even move the order. So that is also a good feature. So it's almost pretty much playing catch up with the X100T. The original black now has the classic chrome that this came with already. So classic chrome is already in here. Beautiful, I love it. Now the original, the guys with the X100, the X-T1 can use. And the coolest feature left for last is the being able to access, the manual focus while in autofocus mode. So back in the old days, I think Minolta was one of the first brands to do it. There was actually a button on the side, so you're in autofocus. Remember, in the old days, it wasn't electronically coupled, but it was, other than Canon, everyone else had a mechanical, a little gear that drove your autofocus. And if you want to manually focus, you have to change the focus mode. But Minolta had a button that you can actually customized, and one of them was it is disengaged the gear, and then you can manually focus. Well, this one here has taken it one step above, and maybe some of the Canons and Nikons can do it. I'm not a DSLR guy. I sort of keep on top of what I can, but I don't follow it like I used to. But this thing now allows you to, as it's autofocusing, and you just want to tweak the autofocus just a little bit, you can just, so it's autofocusing now, and then you can just grab this and still manually focus. And when you go into manual focus, if in manual focus you have it in peak mode, so white, red, or blue, high or low, it automatically goes in focus peaking. So that is an awesome feature for those that prefer manual focusing, but sometimes you can utilize autofocus. So now you're in autofocus and you can just override right away. So that's a great feature. Another feature is when you do focus lock, and this is not a zoom lens, but if you had a zoom lens and you zoomed and you focus locked and you zoomed in or out, what happened is that because it was a parafocal zoom, not a, sorry, it was a varifocal, which means it's not a true zoom. You would focus lock and you zoom in or out, it would be out of focus. Well, this thing now, it actually keeps focus for you while you're zooming in and out. So that's another cool feature, but doesn't apply to this lens. So overall, my review of the X-T1 Silver Graphite, awesome camera. Would I buy it over and on top of the black version? Now that the firmware is the same, pretty much it works the same. You know, I think I'm buying into the game of, it came out originally black, so the silver seems sexier. So to be honest, I actually like the Silver Graphite edition. And then vice versa, because my review camera, the X100T, came out in silver, I actually desired the black version. So hey, I'm a sucker for aesthetics. You know, aesthetics makes a difference in photography. How a camera looks and feels in your hand, it really motivates you to want to go out and take pictures. And that is very common in anyone that pursues artistic endeavors, which photography is sort of, it's both crafts and mechanical. there's a technical side of photography, but there's also an artistic side. And those of you that are artistic, things like camera color and feel in your hand, it does change your emotional balance and how you feel, and then it changes your photography. So hey, if you like the silver, get the silver if it makes you feel better. If you like black because you're more utilitarian and you think you're more stealth, I think it's more of an emotional thing. And then you just feel like you're more stealth, so you'll take better pictures, or you feel like this is a film camera and you'll take better pictures. So either way, I think this is great. The APD lens, the non-APD version, I think the last time I checked at B&H was $1,000 US, and this APD version is $1,500. Is it worth the extra $500 for this APD technology? I've heard some reviews say what you get out of the APD version of this lens, those that are proficient in Lightroom or Photoshop, you can add that slight vignette and you can change the out of focus area enough that you can almost mimic what this lens does. But I'm always a believer in, if you can get something optically, instead of having to do it in post-production, then that's better. So if you shoot with this lens and you like that look that you get and there's less post-processing as possible, then I say go for it. Is it worth the extra $500? It's up to you. If you're a portrait photographer and that's what you do for a living, you can actually one thing I forgot to mention is, it's really hard to see, but this aperture of f1.2, aperture, the number that you see there is based on it's an actual mathematical equation of the focal length from the front element to the sensor, I think, to the diameter of the lens. Okay, so that is the equation. So technically it's an f1.2, but because of the APD, the filter that's in here, it actually does adjust the amount of light getting through. Less light gets in. So when you're shooting at f1.2, the little orange section here tells you, but it's allowing in the light equivalent to f1.7. And then so you go to f2.8, it's allowing in the light equivalent to an f3. So just remember that, okay? So you are getting less light coming in with this APD lens versus the non-APD version. So if you're all about low light photography and you need that little extra bit of speed, then the bokeh, the out of focus area is different rendering than this, but in terms of the depth of field, how much you're actually getting a little bit more on this, a little bit less on the other one. So if less is good for you, meaning shallower depth of field, then the other 56 non-APD is better. I hope I didn't completely nerd out there, but either way, it's a fantastic lens, fantastic camera. Enjoy shooting with it. Thank you Fujifilm Canon for loaning this to me, as well as I've had this for 2 months. I feel like I own it already, but I don't. So both these cameras are going back. I'm gonna miss them both. I enjoy shooting with it. I should end this video, but one quick thing as well. Because the electronic shutter on this goes to 1/32,000th of a second, you can shoot in bright daylight at f1.2 at, let's just say, 1600th of a second, and you'll be getting shutter speeds of 1/20,000th, 1/32,000th of a second. You can shoot wide open with this lens in daylight. So that's a huge advantage. It's super quiet. You don't even realize that you're shooting it because it's so quiet. Even the mechanical shutter on this is quiet, but the electronic, you cannot even hear it. So that's another advantage of shooting this type of lens with this type of body. So, and that fast electronic and mechanical shutter speed is also on the X100T. So anyways, that's it. Thank you so much for watching. Have fun and wait for my next video. Subscribe up here. And what do I say is happy shooting. Click, click.